Hello and welcome to Word of Life Church. We are so glad that you are tuning in with us today. We're going to be talking about being harder on the ones that you love. So if you have ever done this, you're going to want to stick around for the message today. So we're talking about being harder on the ones you love, which is one of the reasons I have my wonderful husband here with me, because we've been married, 14 years. And so there's been some times to where maybe we felt like each other could have done something in a different way. And so I wanted to bring up this because it doesn't matter if you're in a marriage, if you're in a friendship, at work, family members, strangers, You're always going to encounter different things with different people, and sometimes we don't handle that situation the best way possible. And so I want to get into the Word and find out what God says about it, and why do we feel like we are harder on the ones we love versus maybe someone we just met. The first verse that I want to start with is Luke 6:31. It says, "Do to others as you would have them do to you." Now, we've talked about this, personal situations to where maybe we're driving down the road and, not everyone who drives knows how to drive. And so they may cut you off or do something that kind of frustrates you or sets you on edge. And we've even made remarks of, well, I'm going to, see what I can do to prove a point to that person. You want to make that person feel like, hey, I am acknowledging what you've done is wrong, and I feel like you need to know that that wasn't right. And so we don't handle it in the best situation because...
Not always.
Sometimes we want to, go and make sure that person understands the frustration that we had. And so we were talking about this, and I've even made the statement, I'm like, no, we're supposed to do unto others as we have them do unto you. And he's like, no, we're supposed to do unto others. And so I'm doing unto others. I'm like, no, as you would have them do to you, not as to what they're doing to you. And a lot of times people get that mixed up because they're like, I'm going to repay that person because they're asking for it, right? People call it karma, and they're like, well, that's going to come back around and bite you. We can kind of take those statements and twist them in and make it sound like, oh, that's part of what the Bible says. But here he's not talking about repaying evil for evil.
That's right.
He's actually saying the opposite, that we are supposed to demonstrate love and grace like he does to us. And I was thinking about this because in a relationship, no matter whether it's a marriage, a friendship, you and your kids, whatever, there's gonna be situations that present themselves, and you have to know, how am I responding? How am I handling the situation? Because a lot of times from someone that we love, we know their strengths, we know their weaknesses, and so when they do something that doesn't meet up to our expectations or what we think that they're capable of doing, we tend to get really frustrated and are like, when we take it out on them, and we are so much harder.
I'll just do it myself.
Yeah, we're so much harder on the people that we love because we know what they're capable of. Whereas if we just met someone, a stranger or a coworker, we tend to give them a little bit more grace. We're a lot more patient with them because we don't know what they're capable of. You're still learning that person and trying to establish that relationship with them. And so that's one of the reasons why I feel like we're harder on the people that we love. And then it got me thinking of, okay, well, if we do that in the natural, how much more do we do that to God? right? You know,
It's a great thought.
we are capable of doing so much because God has put so many different gifts and talents in each one of us. And so he knows our full potential, and we don't always live up to it. And thankfully, God is not there beating us up, putting us down, saying, I'm frustrated with you. I know what you can do and you're not doing it. So we need to take his example of, if he's not, so hard and harsh on us, and he loves us so much, how much more should we be towards the ones that we love?
Yep.
I mean, think about it. I have to live with you, right?
Yes, you do.
And so if that's the case, and I am coming off sharp or degrading you, not valuing who you are as a person, I have to live with you. And so it's going to cause strife in the house. And then that's going to feed over. The kids are going to sense it. When people come in the house, they're going to be like, whoa, what is going on in here, right?
Yeah.
Because we didn't take care of what the word's talking about, of loving one another. Despite failures, mistakes, what we feel the person should or shouldn't do. And so it's vital that we take time to evaluate ourselves and say, okay, am I giving this person the benefit of the doubt? Or am I just really frustrated and I'm trying to take on too much? And so now it's just going out throughout the rest of our day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in that scenario where you just mentioned, like, if you were, too sharp or something, which rarely or never happens.
Oh, wow. Thanks.
At this point in that scenario, right, I could either, like you said, go, do I need to respond? Right?
Yeah.
Eye for an eye, like, mess with the bull, you get the horns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you do that, it just spirals completely out of control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we want you guys to take a moment and just kind of process, when is the last time that you lost your cool? And who was it?
Don't say it out loud.
Yeah, who was it to? You don't have to leave it in the comments. But we want you to think about this, because if you go back to the root of it, what made you snap in those moments? Like, what was that trigger point? Because each one of us has a line to where you get real, real close, and then once someone crosses it, they're like, whoa, what happened?
Yeah, they could just be an innocent bystander at that moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about this in another session about chain of events, to where one thing, and then it leads to the next and the next and the next. But it's the same kind of thing that we're talking about right now, is how you do one thing, and then if it's not taken care of in that moment, and you let it linger over an hour, 2 hours, till it's nighttime, till the next day, it just gets bigger and bigger until it spirals out of control, and it can cause a lot of problems in relationships, in your finances, in your mental state, your physical. It literally goes throughout all areas of your life because of something that we would consider so minor, right?
Yeah.
We're like, who cares? I mean, so what? We want to kind of get into a state of pride, to where we're like, I want to be the first one to apologize. They were wrong, I was right. Sometimes we need to be the bigger person and be like, who cares if I was right and they were wrong? I'm going to go and apologize anyways. But not an apology that's like, I know you were wrong, but I'm going to be the bigger person and apologize, right? That's not an apology. That is trying to stir some things back up again. So it's not doing what the Bible's talking about here in Luke, to where do unto others as you'd have them do to you. So if you want love, demonstrate love. If you want patience, demonstrate patience, right? Whatever it is that you want in your life, you have to be willing to give that in order for someone to even see how to do that. Because we live our lives as a testimony, as an example for others to be able to follow. Do we always get it right? No. But we can be quick to ask for forgiveness. We can be quick to change what we've done or said, to where we can get back in unity with whatever happened in those moments.
Yeah. And you talked about earlier too, like you asked the question of how many times do we do that with God, right? Because if his word is saying, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, he's there for love. Like, he's there for a comfort. He's there for a peace. And if we're not close with him, if we don't have a relationship with him, we may not know these things.
Yeah.
And I even think about Jesus when he was on the earth. Like, that's the way he lived. That's the way he walked. I mean, all the people trying to set him up, trying to, get him to do things where they could judge him, right? And he just continued to just show kindness and love.
Yeah.
It's not always easy.
It's not. And I also want to point out, too, because some people who are watching may be like, gosh, so you're saying I'm supposed to just let everybody run me over.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. I mean, we can look in the Bible, too, to where, Jesus, he was pretty outspoken. And he was like, this is wrong. You should not be doing this. So we're not saying that you should just let everybody do whatever they want to do and run all over you and put you down. No, not at all. What we're saying is that we have to get into a place to where we get into God's word and we find out how we're able to actually forgive people, how we're actually able to love people when they wrong us, how we're able to maybe remove ourselves from a situation, to take a breather before we actually say something that we'll regret. That's what we're talking about. Right.
And in those stories and in those verses, right, where Jesus would respond to them, he would respond in love, but he would also respond with affirmation of what he was doing and why.
Yeah.
Right? So again, he wasn't necessarily letting people just run him over. I mean, he invented the table flip, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he came up with it. So, there is such a thing as, right, standing your ground in your beliefs, right, and what's right, but there's also such a thing as forgiveness and, not holding things against somebody because they may not be at a place where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes people don't even know that they did something that you didn't like.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like I said, we've been married for a long time. And sometimes I'll say something and he takes it the wrong way because he heard a tone in my voice that I was not even intending. But to him, he was like, well, that was a little rude. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Because we can hear ourselves, but sometimes we don't hear how the other person hears.
There you go.
So we have to kind of have a really good communication. And we were talking about this too. You would think after 14 years, we'd have communication down like great.
I'm a great communicator. I don't know what the problem
Let me tell you, guys and girls communicate. So different. Very, very different. And so
I think the conversation went, if you all would just communicate the way I do, it would be perfect.
Yes, see, that's what I'm talking about. So, I mean, at work, he could be a great communicator, but he's dealing with a lot of men, and they understand each other, I feel like. And so he'll come and say something to me, and I'm like, what does that even mean? Like he has all the, I don't know. He's great at those old sayings, right? He'll use them all the time. Stuff I've never heard of before in my life. And I'm like, where do you come up with this stuff? Like, what does it even mean? And then I'll have to get on Google and I'm like, what does this mean? That makes no sense. And so I'm like, okay, just speak English.
I'm an old soul.
Yeah, old soul. Or we'll just have different conversations and I'm like, how did you get that out of that? That's not even what I said.
Yeah.
But it's all down to the details.
Mm-hmm.
We can think about a blueprint, right? When we were building this house, oh my gosh, you guys, I had a vision.
Yeah.
Well, my vision in my head sounded different when they started putting it on paper.
Sure.
So I was like, oh yeah, I want this, this, and this. And I can't draw for nothing. And so I'm trying to draw out everything on paper. And then when we take it to the architect, I'm like, this is it. This is my dream home. And he's like, that doesn't work. And I'm like, what do you mean? I drew it out. It's perfect. And he's like, yeah, but when you actually put numbers, actual measurements, this wall is not symmetrical with this wall. That won't work. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, oh, okay. But there had to be a communication.
Yeah.
And then a way of actually interpreting what I was saying versus what it actually looked like. And so it's the same thing in a normal conversation with someone. You have to make sure you're on the same page.
Yeah.
Literally. Because just because you say, oh, I want to do this and this, it may mean something completely different in your eyes, right?
Sure.
So just taking time to communicate. Okay, what did you hear? Right? Something so simple, and you're like, well, how could you not get that? That's plain as day. Trust me, not everyone hears what you're saying. So give them the benefit of the doubt and kind of go over it again.
Yeah. And then too, right, which I think you're probably fixing to go into this next verse in John 13, but where even though you're saying something to someone, right, and it doesn't seem like they're getting it, at that point, you have a choice to make, right? And so often, if it's somebody that we are familiar with, that we have a relationship with, right, whether that's a working friendship, spouse, whatever, family, whatever it is, the closer you are to that person, the more love and grace you need to try and show them.
Yeah.
Because it can be very, very frustrating.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if you have kids, you know how many times.
How many times I tell you to do that?
Right? And people parent differently, right? But no matter what, you've got to make sure that when you're talking to them, when you're communicating to them, right, before you get to the disciplinary side of things, right, you got to show love. You have to not get frustrated, because it's really easy, especially with kids.
Oh my gosh,
so easy. It's easy with people that you work with every single day, right, day in, day out, week in, week out, year after year. But then, like you started out saying, perfect strangers. It's like, well, I don't really know this person, so I'm going to give them a little more grace.
Yeah.
Right? And it can damage some relationships, right? Because those people that you don't have that grace and that love with, they see how you're acting and they're like, well, what's going on here?
Yeah, you didn't do that for me.
Yeah, exactly.
I think of back when I was a kid and I would get in trouble. Mom and Dad would always make sure that they would sit us down. And I hated it. Oh my gosh, I hated it when I was a kid. I was like, just let's get this punishment over with, right? But no, my dad would sit us down and he would like talk to us. This is why you're in trouble. And these are the consequences. But then after all of that, he would make us hug him. And I'm like, I don't want to hug you. Like, I'm mad at you right now. But what he was showing us is that he loved us and that he didn't want to, take things away from us or,
discipline.
Yeah. It hurt him. We didn't understand that at the time. I do now that as a parent.
I used to think the same thing. Yeah, right.
Yeah. But he always made sure that he's like, I want you to know that I love you and like kind of get back in that, good graces, I guess you could say, to where he's like, look, this is not what I want to do. I'm, teaching you, I'm training you. But he was making sure that he was correcting in love and not out of a state of, oh gosh, I'm so irritated with you right now. I'm taking this away from you. You're grounded, that type deal. It was, look, let me explain to you, this is what happened. Don't do these things again, and none of this will happen again, right? And sometimes we gotta do it again and again until we're like, well, what am I thinking? Why do I keep doing the same things over and over again?
Right.
And, God is so wonderful because even on those times to where we mess up, we get it wrong, we're like, oh, gosh, I know what I'm supposed to do, and I just keep going backwards. God's like, I'm still here. I'm still wanting to talk to you. I haven't left you. Like, I am still here for you. I still want to help you. But sometimes we want to run away from him because we're like, oh gosh, I've messed up and I'm just not in a good place. Yeah. That we think we can hide from him, right? But we can't. God is everywhere, and you can't hide anything from him. He knew the moment it happened. He knew before it happened anyways, but you can't keep anything from him. So you might as well just run to him and say, all right, I messed up, so let's get this right again. Yeah. Same thing in relationships. Be quick to go back and be like, you know what? I don't know what I was thinking. I apologize. Yeah. Get it right. Like, don't wait days, weeks, months, years, and then try and come back and fix, what you should have fixed the same day. It could be something so easy that is over with. Now, I do understand there are, huge things not just little, arguments and things that take place in people's lives that are a much bigger thing to just be like, oh yeah, I forgive you. I totally get that. But working towards that needs to start as soon as possible. Otherwise, you need to separate yourself from that situation if that's something that you're like, I can't be in this environment, right? So always take it to God. Say, Lord, how can I release this? What is the best way to handle this? In Ephesians 4:26, it tells us, be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath. I like this verse because it's actually giving you permission to be angry, but it's
Girl,
saying,
I'm about to be mad at you.
saying don't sin. And that sounds like it contradicts itself, right? Because you're like, well, how can I be angry but not sin at the same time? So, like we were talking about kind of in the beginning, there are different things that Jesus did not approve of. That he was like, that is wrong. That is not moral. This should not be taking place.
Right.
And he was angry about it.
Sure.
And he was like, no. And he made sure he let everyone know this is wrong. So there are times to where, yes, you can get to the place to where something, kind of makes you angry.
Yeah.
But how we respond when we're angry, that's where it's talking about don't sin. So, don't go and like bust down someone's door and almost kill them. That would be sin, right?
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
But you can be angry and say, that upsets me. And you can even let someone know those things, right? Like I can come to you and be like, that really upsets me. Like that made me mad. That's not sin. We're talking about it. He needs to know what upsets me. I need to know what upsets him, right? So we have that open communication to where we're able to discuss those things. But it also says not to go to bed in anger. So it needs to be dealt with right then.
And I'm going to tell you, there's been some times where I'm like, I just don't want to talk to you till tomorrow.
And let me tell you, this guy can fall asleep so fast. Like
yeah, don't let me lay down.
He's like, whatever, I'll just let the care go and deal with it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I'm like the type of person that can't go to sleep until we deal with it right now.
Well, there's also, there's also times where you think, you know what, I have let it go. And internally, you're not upset and you're not angry. So you think, I'm just going to go to bed, right?
Yeah.
But if the other person still has not been released, if there hasn't been closure on that, like technically, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm good. I don't care. I'll go to sleep right now. You know what I mean? But if you haven't, if I haven't corrected that, if I haven't closed that with you, then somebody's going to bed mad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's your choice, right? Like, whether you come and you apologize, I come, I apologize.
Sure.
The other person has to receive that. Because if they don't, it's not on the other person. They did what they were supposed to do. They're like, I asked for forgiveness. You refused to forgive me. So I'm going to go to bed now. And
yeah, it's not up to you, though.
Yeah.
Right? It's not up to you to make them accept your apology and go that route. You're free and clear then. You can close them little eyeballs.
Yeah. But you also have to be mindful of the other person. Because even though you're good and the other person's not, there's still going to be that tension in the morning, right? Because
not with me, I'm good.
Yeah, not with you. You're great.
Oh, okay.
You're great.
Don't you remember? I was good.
See my point here? Okay. Two different. Which is great because you can compliment each other. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're still sensitive to the other person, right? That doesn't mean that you're trying to tiptoe around them, like, oh, don't talk to that person today. We're not good. I'm good. They're not good. But you have to say, okay, Lord, I need you to help me know what now. Like, I've asked for forgiveness. They do not want to forgive me. So what needs to happen here? And so many times we always want to just blame the other person. Like, well, if they would just let this go, this wouldn't be a big deal anymore. And sometimes the Lord will show you different things of, this isn't actually the root of the problem. And he'll show you something else that's going on in the other person's life to where you're like, okay, that's the area. And so just being sensitive to the Holy Spirit and letting him minister to you will help in your future responses from how to handle different things. Like I said, not everyone is going to do what the word says, but you are, because you are listening to the word, and that's how faith comes. Like I said, we've been married a while, and so we still are learning each other. And
I know what buttons to push and which ones not to push.
That's what I'm saying. You would think, you'd be like, oh, we got this thing figured out. But I've met people who've been married for 50 plus years, and they'll still tell you, yeah, we have disagreements, we are human.
Yeah.
We have different things we like that are different from the other. You're going to have difference of opinions, but it's about how you handle those situations, which is why I really wanted to talk about this, because we are so hard on the people that we love, and we've got to be mindful of, why am I doing this?
Why do I have this higher set of expectations?
Yeah. And in a sense, it's kind of, we are thinking highly of the other person because we're like, man, I know you can do better than this. But to the person, it's like, man, you think I'm worthless. You think I am no good. And so what could be taken as a compliment actually comes off as an insult.
Yeah.
And so we've got to be careful about putting people down, being too harsh or hard on them in moments when we should be showing them love.
Yep, agreed.
Proverbs 15:1 tells us, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger.
Bro, that one couldn't be more true.
Think about it. You can say one thing. Okay, you could say no thing. How about that?
Yeah, you actually can say no thing.
Let me tell y'all. Okay, so I can give him a look, and he's like, what's wrong?
Yeah, what's your problem?
And I said nothing. And I'm like, I didn't even say anything. He's like, I know what that look means.
Girl, you said all kinds of things.
So you don't necessarily even have to say anything. Your facial and your body language can say way more than words can sometimes.
Yep.
So here, I love that he's saying, a harsh word can stir up anger. So being mindful of, is that really what I should say right now? Because there have been times to where, things will be going on and I'm like, I don't have a good line, right? That's not going to help me in that case. But man, it sounds good. And I'm like, don't say that. Why would you say that? That's going to totally mess up the rest of this day. And so just keep it to yourself. Say, all right, Lord, forgive me for thinking that. And then continue on. You don't have to be smug and you don't have to be, whatever. Sometimes it's better not to say anything. Just
no looks, no nothing.
Yeah, just keep on walking. Don't stop. Don't look.
It's hard to argue with somebody who doesn't argue back.
Exactly.
Right? It's hard to continue to stir up anger with somebody who's not responding to you at the same level.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it takes two to tango.
Absolutely.
Like, that's the truth. And so when you have soft answers, right, you're going to de-escalate a situation.
Yeah.
Right? When you have harsh, sharp, right, really good lines that you want to use, you're just going to continue to just kick that hornet's nest over and over again.
Yeah. The last verse that I want to read is Ephesians 4:29. It says, let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth, but what is good for necessary edification, that it may impart grace to the hearers. Sometimes we need to just remind ourselves of this verse. Let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth. You can have a thought. Hey, we got lots of them. I think it's like over 30,000 thoughts that we have a day. So you can have a thought, but you don't have to speak that thought out.
The Bible tells you not to.
So we have to put a guard over our mouth, because if not, it will send you into so much trouble. and your good day could turn into a bad day real quick.
Yeah, and some people make a profession out of coming up with just straight zingers. You know what I mean? Like, it is their life's mission. And, yeah, we're not supposed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
As awesome as they sound sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
you're not supposed to.
Think about in our world right now, people want to roast people. Like, that's the thing. Like, they're like, this is fun, this is cool, this is what we're supposed to be doing. And I'm like, man, how rude is that? Like, to have someone sit there when all you come up and bash them. But that seems so normal in our society that that's how we interact with people.
Yep.
And you'll see it in families, you'll see it in marriages, everywhere, to where people are like, oh, I'm just joking. Well, to every joke, there's a little truth underneath there that you actually thought about that person. Otherwise, you wouldn't have made the statement.
Yeah, and that's why these roasts are just not good. I mean, they may bring a quick laugh right now in the moment, right? But the next time you see that person, that is the first thing that's going to come to your mind.
Yeah. So just be mindful of, am I being hard on those around me? Mm-hmm. Or am I actually being slow to speak? Am I doing unto others as I would want them to do to me? So that's what we wanted to talk to you guys about, just to evaluate yourself and say, what have I been doing? How have I been treating, my spouse, my kids, my coworkers, those strangers? Who do I treat better? Because sometimes when you start to look at it, you'll be like, man, I did treat that person I just met way better than I did my spouse or my kids. Because you spend so much time with someone, it's really easy to get frustrated.
Yeah.
Especially because you're taking on all of the things that you do, and then when things don't go right that day, you tend to take it out on the people who are right around you.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we want to vent, right, to just kind of release it. But then we're putting all of that stress and pressure on the other person.
Yep.
And then what does that do to them? That can affect how they respond to the next person that they come in contact with. So just stopping and evaluating and saying, Lord, help me throughout my day to where I respond in love instead of in a way that comes against and puts people down.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you would like to give, you can go to wordoflifechurchtx.org and click the online donation button. We want to be able to pray and stand in agreement with you.
Yeah.
We want to say thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.